and gentlemen, welcome to the Darkstone Dossiers with your host, Anthony Darkstone.
Boo. Well, how else could I start a show like this? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. There's just a little bit of a fun opening for us today, considering the guests that we've got. And I will do my usual opening for those of you who've been here before will know. Buonasera tutti, buon noite, buenas noches, guten Abend, and a very good evening to everybody, and a good afternoon, and a good morning to everybody. Some of you will know why I do this. It's because we have people from all over the world that tune in from different countries. And this show is brought to you from the Society of American Magicians International Assembly. Do you have to be an American to join the SAM? No. Anybody who has a passion and a love for magic can join the SAM and indeed be part of our International Assembly. So it's really, really nice to have you all here. And that's the little thing for SAM. Just get in touch with me or any one of these gentlemen who are going to speak to you in a few moments if you are interested. Let me very, very quickly, before we get into the show, acknowledge some wonderful people from our assembly. PJ from Texas, Brian Rollet from Malta, and dear Martin Duffy from England. Before I get into the show with my wonderful guest, Michael, I'd like to introduce you in no particular order, as it were, to three gentlemen. The first one is a past national president of the Society of American Magicians, and is now, I'm pleased to say, the dean of our International Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Joel Zawitsky.
Hey, everybody. I'm just going to stay backstage running stuff here, so don't mind the man behind the curtain.
The next gentleman I'd like to say a quick hello to and acknowledge is from Canada. He is our president-elect of the Society of American Magicians. Ladies and gentlemen, President-elect Mr. Rod Chow.
Thank you, Anthony, and welcome to everyone here from all parts of the world. Before we start, I just wanted to actually congratulate Anthony because I just saw his certificate posted online from Magic Film, and that's about bizarre magic, and that's kind of like what the topic of today's dossiers is. And Anthony just got awarded status of most exalted member of the Magic Film. So congratulations, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Ron.
You're welcome. No, I was I'm really looking forward to this dossier with Michael Kelly because I actually, my other passion is astrology as well as tarot reading. And so I'm really interested in hearing what Michael has to say about that. So enjoy, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rod. I'm glad you brought that up. I have to be honest and say, I'm glad you did. What can I say? I'm like a little kid when you get something like that. It's really very humbling, and I'm deeply honored from the Magiculum too. It just came out of the blue. Anyway, before we get into the show, there is one very, 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 the most important gentleman, if you like, and I know Rod and Joel will agree with me, and that is our current president of the Society of American Magicians. We refer to the president always as most illustrious, Mr. Tom Gentile.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. I'm looking forward to Michael Kelly's very interesting topic today, and I'm a little concerned about forgetting Magic Week. Please don't forget Magic Week.
We haven't, Tom. Sorry.
I know.
We haven't, most illustrious. We have all kinds of wonderful things lined up. Well, the International Assembly has, I promise you. Yeah, we have some rare treats and delights. One of them involves. You will. One of them involves Dorothy Dietrich, and another one comes from the mysterious island of Malta, from the Chamber of Mystery. And it will even have effects in it that Houdini did. But more of that later. Let's now get to what we're doing today.
See what's in the cards.
That's a good way of putting it, Tom. Most illustrious. Yeah, absolutely. So before I introduce you to my guest, let me just give you a little taste of a brief video that our wonderful friend in Las Vegas, Mark Williams, who always does the editing, etc., on these shows, put together for us. So whenever you're ready, Joel.
Your sin is witchcraft.
Dude, I'm not gonna sleep. It's terrible.
Those were so grim but amazing at the same time. Oh my gosh.
Well, there we are. So that gives you some indication of what goes on in the slightly darker regions of Michael Kelly's mind. You should see his lighter regions. They're more fun, as you saw. The bizarre magician who puts a red nose on and plunges his hand into a bucket of water. This is a wonderful combination, I think you'll agree, between the two. Because if you can't have fun, why bother? So, ladies and gentlemen, as some of you may not know, usually in the United States, because your mics are off, this is how we applaud somebody, just by doing that. So, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Kelly.
Thank you, Anthony. Hello. Hello.
Hello, Michael. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm doing great. It's my month.
It is your month, indeed. Yes, it's October. We have all kinds of spooky stuff. Michael, I like your setup. You've got tons of books behind you. You've got a portrait.
What you can see here is just the half of the room, and the books carry all the way around into the next room, up the stairs, into the bedroom. And my Kindle weighs just as much.
Yeah, magicians are not really hoarders. Yeah, right. I love your puppet that you call Saint Nick or Father Nick or Uncle Nick, and of course you have your wonderful painting of Mr. Edgar Allan Poe that we will be talking about, and lounging to your right, tucked away, is your wonderful Mr. Bones skeleton. Michael, congratulations to you, because I know you have now just become a member of Equity.
Oh, absolutely. It's something that I intended to do a year ago, and I just put it on hold because of COVID, because I wasn't doing live shows. But now, as I'm moving back into them, one of the big advantages of Equity in the UK is that it includes public liability insurance. And this, of course, is necessary to hire the best venues. And all of the shows that I do are ones which I produce myself from scratch. I'm not generally hired by people to do events. I put events on, I publicize them, I sell the tickets, and I really am involved at every stage of the business. But I've been wanting to be able to hire the larger theatrical venues on the island, and having that insurance is essential. And also having the backup of a body like Equity is just really reassuring. If you know, I don't know if you get the insurance, but I think in the USA as well, I'm pretty sure that Equity certainly give access to very favorable terms for insurance.
They do indeed, because in the US, there are a couple of things, including the Society of American Magicians has a wonderful similar type scheme. Equity, of course, for those of you who don't know, is a major organization in the UK, and it has all kinds of performing artists. Name a famous British actor and they're members. Simple as that. Famous British musicians, they're members. Magicians, dancers, and they do a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes. And as Michael was saying, one of it is the insurance liability. The actual costs, very reasonable. I was very privileged. Where are we? 2019, I believe it was, to be invited to give a talk there at their headquarters in London. So that was kind of very interesting. So they do a lot of work for people in the performing arts behind the scenes. Some really very cool people. Now, congratulations to that, Michael. You were talking about the shows and talks that you give and perform. Elaborate, if you will, please, a little bit about that.
Well, they are what you would describe as bizarre magic. When I first started performing magic, and well, I think like most of us, I started off collecting interesting props. I was a collector first, until it reached the stage where I'd spent so much money, I thought, I really need to start doing something with this. But the shows I put on, they all have a theme. They're generally about 90 minutes long. Of course, learning how to structure a show so it has a proper flow to it, that's another art all in its own. But they tend to cover themes such as, well, some of the examples are witchcraft through the ages, or tarot tales, or a new one that's up and coming, the secrets of the runes.
Hmm.
And of course, I do like putting that red nose on occasionally.
Yeah, that's funny. I remember when we welcomed you to the SAM and the International Assembly, one of the pictures that I ran was you with the red nose. And a very, very dear friend of mine, and indeed many folks here, who was a past national president of the SAM, said, "A bizarre mentalist with a red nose." That was Dan Garrett. So yeah, it does get noticed. So there is a kind of slight crossover. Now, we've talked a little bit about your shows and the talks that you give on these topics. We do have, and I don't know if he's here because I haven't looked in the gallery yet, Mark Collin, who is the chairman of the Paranormal Investigation Committee of the SAM, which I think shortly you're going to become a member, Michael. I happen to know. All of this, so people kind of go, well, yeah, it's just a bit of fun and it's nonsense. Who believes in any of this nowadays? Well, the short answer is some people do. And they do to the extent where certain unsavory people, criminals, if you will, yes, take advantage of them and take their money. And it's not just $20 or $30, we're talking millions. And part of what the Paranormal Investigation Committee of the SAM does is work alongside people like the FBI, et cetera, to expose these charlatans who are taking money on the false pretenses, basically. Yes. So you've written quite a lot of books, and I did say to you in our prepping for the show, if you could have a couple of them handy, perhaps you can pull them up and show us the titles, Michael.
Absolutely. I've actually written, well, I've just finished writing my 55th book. So I'm not going to show them all, don't worry.
No, that's quite an accomplishment.
This was the most recent, Rune Shifting and Tarot Transformation, which of course is about runes and tarot. This is a local interest one, Runes of Man, which catalogues the rune stones on the Isle of Man here. The Book of Ogham goes Celtic. This contains information on the Celtic myths, etc. This is an interesting one. This is a biography of a guy called Dusty Miller, who's a wand maker and a folk magician in the UK, who actually made my wand for me, my magic wand. So I write fiction, a collection of horror stories, The Eldritch Isle, a collection of Celtic tales for fear of little men, and some of the fiction is a little bawdier and more fantasy based. Although this is my Damsels series.
Ah, right.
Which again, you'll see the cover is based upon a tarot card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of books there on their fiction and non-fiction, and they do cover these esoteric topics, absolutely.
Now, I myself, as you well know, and those close to me know, have quite an interest in these matters. I'm not saying, ghosts are real or ghosts are not real. All I'm saying is all these things are worth investigating and looking at, and coming to each person's conclusion. I think in conversations, and those close to me will know that I've spent a lot of time, well, not last year, I didn't go anywhere, or this year, but especially in Denmark, because I'm an avid student of Esoteric, which brings us very neatly to the runes. And of course, as you've mentioned, the cross-reference to the runes of the Isle of Man, where you hail from and are currently sitting. Yes,
Yeah,
and its symbol, as I like to call it, is a picture of Rudy Colby. Now, if you're a magician, you'll get the gag, because if you look it up on Google, you'll see it's actually 3 legs. It's 3 legs. So it's a kind of private magician's joke, you know. It's Rudy Colby. But so the island itself is steeped in kind of like a lot of mystery and, for want of a better word, folk craft. Care to elaborate a little bit on that, Michael?
It certainly is. I mean, historically, of course, you have the Celts who settled here, basically the same group of Celts as settled Ireland. Some of them just stopped halfway across and you couldn't be bothered to go any further, I guess. And then there was the Kingdom of Man, which was established by the Norwegians under Godred Crovan. We actually have here on the island what's believed to be the longest continuous parliament in the world, which is our Tynwald, which was established back just before the turn of the first millennium.
I believe, if my memory serves me, around the early part of the 13th century. Yes.
Yeah, it goes back a long time.
Long time way. It's a continuous parliament. Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, in terms of living tradition, though, there's very much a living tradition of fairy lore on the island, for instance. And certainly when I was growing up, you would be told these tales on your grandmother's and mother's knee. And there are still plenty of the older folks about on the island now who will not have these stories mocked. Nobody over here who is of Manx heritage will cut down a traman tree, which is an elder, because it's, well, you just do not do it. It's really asking for trouble. So these folk beliefs and all of the wonderful stories and practices associated with them continued here for certainly within living memory, within my memory, and I wish they would continue a long way beyond.
It is, in many senses, almost like indigenous people, really. They have their own craft and folklore, and it is considered sacred. I mean,
absolutely, yes.
Those who know me well will know my links with Native Americans, etc. And a lot of those traditions, they're not Hollywood dances with bulls. I mean, they're just not. The real deal is sacred. And we do have a member of the International Assembly, and indeed a member of the SAM, a lady in Colorado called Autumn Morningstar. And she incorporates a lot, I mean, she's got permission to do it, of course, but she incorporates a lot of this within her performances, which are very kind of Native American based. So there's be a levitation, but it happens with feathers. You get the idea. Yeah. So that sort of thing. So I am personally absolutely very, very delighted to be able to chat with you and have everybody else eavesdrop, on the conversation about these. People are skeptical. That's okay, but I'm with you when you kind of say, yeah, don't mess with it. It's someone's sacred belief.
It is, and it's not even a religion. It's something that goes deeper than that. It is an absolute connection to the place, to the land around you, to the air that you breathe. It's as simple as that. It's just the way things are.
and
It's
and
not-
have been for a long time.
Yeah. So I do incorporate some of this into my shows, absolutely. I do a fairy themed show. In fact, I did one over Zoom a few weeks ago, and the first half didn't go well. By which I mean, it wasn't that I was getting effects wrong. It wasn't, but I just felt dislocated from it. And as time went on, it was almost like being tapped on the shoulder, and I thought, I'm not doing this properly. I'm not giving these stories that I'm telling the justice they should have. I need to rethink the way I tell this before I do it again. And then the second half of the show, after that realization, just went very smoothly. But it's a kind of gnawing certainty when something isn't quite right. Because
you've done it. Sorry to interrupt you. You've done it long enough to know that, and sadly today, I mean, I don't mean this as disrespectful to anybody out there, but there are some folks out there who don't pay attention to how an audience is reacting. So I think, this is a master class, if you like, or a lesson in the master class to however long you've been in the business, to take, maybe watch the reactions, watch what happens. Or would you agree a better word would be to sense the reaction and adapt accordingly?
Yeah, because there really is, when you are performing properly, there really is a flow state that you go into, which is not just you, it's not just what you're doing or the words you're speaking or the audience, it's all of these things, and they're all working together. It's an experience that encapsulates the whole place and everybody in it. And if that flow isn't happening, you need to be able to spot it and work out why. And it's not just the performer. We are performers, we hone our art, we train our skills, we practice, we rehearse, but it's more than that in the moment. And you have to be aware of it. You have to really be in the flow of this thing. And it's almost like you're raising up your own charisma, and it's flowing through you, and it's got to go through the audience as well and come back to you. And it's just this loop. And it's a wonderful thing that when it happens, a show without emotion is pointless. I've had audiences laughing. I've also had audiences crying. There's more than one case when I and audience members have been in tears as a particular story is told, and we're carried along with it. And it's not only cathartic, it's something more. It opens you up to the whole concept of wonder, of possibility, of a bigger world than you imagined. And for me, the whole point of performing is to express all of this in a show. That's what it's for.
Totally agree. I think the word that springs to mind here would be a holistic performance, if you like.
Yes.
Rather than, and you use that wonderful phrase, which is, and then it comes back at you. And it puts me in mind a couple of decades ago now, with dear John Rockebaum. Magicians among us will know who that is. If you're a layperson, it doesn't matter. He expressed in an article I'd written on him, when you're performing, it's almost like a nervous lover trying to woo somebody, and you're showing your passion for something that you love, and in some ways being vulnerable. I mean, I'm paraphrasing a lot of this. As you can imagine, John Rockebaum much more eloquent with words than I ever will be. But and that comes back to you. So I'm glad you touched on that, because today was not just about, skeletons and tarots and runes, etc., which we'll get to in a little bit. But I think it's important for anybody watching, and even if you're a lay person and you're not a performer, you're beginning to go, yeah, there's a little bit that goes into this that we never realized. And why should you? why should you? If you're there watching something and you're experiencing it, then there's no reason to understand that on the film set there's blood squibs and blanks and a gun. You're just going to go, oh my God, he got shot. You don't stop and think, well, there's somebody in the makeup department with blood squibs and et cetera, et cetera. So it's that holistic approach. And I have to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on to discuss that, on the show. So anyone listening, or indeed watches our recording later, will go, aha, yeah, how can I improve the performance? Perhaps an example that springs to mind was dear Margot Fonteyn, Dame Margot Fonteyn. For those who don't know, she was an incredibly famous ballet dancer with the London Ballet Company, and the equivalent of Lady Knighted. She was made a dame by Her Majesty. When she danced the Dying Swan in Swan Lake, there were, as you said, Michael, grown men with tears trickling down their eyes. I had a knot in my throat. It wasn't magic as we know it, but it was magic. You would, God, that swan is dying. Somehow your brain knew that there was a wonderful dancer and a human being on legs, but at the same time, the other part of the brain was absorbing this elegant swan that was dying. So I guess that's really what you're trying to convey, I guess, with your magic.
Absolutely, and particularly with the storytelling style of magic that I do, you have to have that passion. If you don't have a passion for the story you're telling, you're not going to be able to pass it on to anybody else. They're not going. You need to be able to enthrall them. And for me, I think maybe my role model for this wasn't a magician as such, except he was. Really, he was. He was a comedian. And I know that we've spoken about the Irish comedian Dave Allen.
Yeah, yes.
And at the end of each of his shows, he would just be a man sitting in a chair in a studio. The lights were dim, and he would tell a ghost story, just his voice. And it was so evocative. It would keep people on the edge of their seats. And that I find so inspirational. And when I was growing up, we used to have programs on TV where all you would have would be a person telling a story. And that storytelling tradition is very much something that I want to continue in the magic that I do.
Very much so. And I think, a lot of magicians, I think before we came on, somebody mentioned our president-elect's act, Rod Chow, who you've all met earlier on in the show. Now, he does this wonderful weaving, as you call it, his thing to do with astrology and the planets and how it relates to people. I mean, it sounds like, it doesn't sound like much. Well, it doesn't. You got to see it, then it becomes something. It becomes something. And he's gone now, a huge fan of Dave Allen's, and it's a great example, because as you say, there's one moment this man can sit there and rivet you to your seat better than any horror movie or Hitchcock movie. And then at other times, he could be incredibly funny and irreverent. The same character, so to speak, kind of split in half. Now you do that a lot. Why do you suddenly go from this, you're going to hell and your sin is witchcraft, to the guy with the red nose? I mean, how did that come about?
I think if you're going to perform honestly, you have to be who you are. And this is all part of me and who I am. I love all of the horror stuff. I always have. But it's always been mixed in with the humor for me. It's more the Addams Family or the Munsters than the Exorcist in many ways. Right. I just naturally love to laugh, and that doesn't mean I don't sometimes go the other way, but I do really enjoy the humor as well. even the shows where I touch on darker themes, they will always have moments of levity in them, because that's life,
Yes,
you know.
it is.
And you can only be honest in your performance if you're honestly being who you are.
Absolutely. We talked in preparation for the show, and I mentioned earlier on, my passion as a student of Esoteric, et cetera, et cetera. And people go, runes, yeah, I've heard of them, whatever. Well, a lot of people, in fact, are using runes, or have been for the last probably 5 years or more. And they go, really? Have we? Yeah, yes, you have. If you're using Bluetooth, that's a rune. Is it? Yes, it is. It's the actual rune that's attributed to King Harald, Harald, not O, yes, Harald of Norway. And I think he went on to take over Denmark at some stage as well. But that kind of straight line and looks like a couple of triangles to make a B on the Bluetooth, that logo is from
That's
the
a
rune, I
rune,
think you'll
yeah.
agree. And you brought up the Norse, which I want to delve into more with you, as you're the specialist on it. They were up in Scotland, and at one stage, back in the 14th century, when Rosslyn Chapel was built, they were known as the lairds of something, which is lord in Scottish, yes, and at the same time had titles in Norway. So the same person was both. And then you mentioned they drifted down, and where you are, for people who don't know, is kind of like in the middle of the Irish Sea. So you've got the Celts up there, you've got the other Celts from Ireland, you've got the Druids a little bit to your right leg, shall we say. And they've all come into this very mysterious Isle of Man. So tell us a little bit about these runes, the Norwegian connections, and how you incorporate, I know you've written a book about it, but how you incorporate that in your magic and what they mean to you.
Well, as I said, I am developing a whole show based around runes and the mythology. And mythology is important too, but I'll come back to that in a moment. The runes themselves, I've got some here. Let's see. What do we have? There's a good one. The first rune, the first in the sequence there. That one's called Fehu. It's the F sound. It represents cattle or money, because of course in those days, the more cattle you had, the wealthier you were. And it also represents expansive force. Now, the rune exists in two worlds. It exists outside because I can look in a field and I can see cattle. I can open my wallet and I can see money. These are tangible things that I can touch, and they are this rune, or it represents them. But the idea of it also exists in here, in the inner world. And the idea of the runes is bringing your inner world and the outer world into the same vibration. And this is what the idea of using the runes is about. You can use them to change things in the outer world in this way, or you can cast them and read them to see what patterns are prevailing in the world. And of course, they were a system of writing, but each rune had its meaning. It had its place, its position in the order of letters, which was quite different from the ABC alphabet that we're used to now. The mythology, again, mythic thinking is something that's very important to me. The stories that come to us in myth. And here on the island, as you say, I have the blend of both Celtic and Norse myths all intermingled. But mythic thinking, these are stories which you don't necessarily believe in the way that somebody religious would believe stories. our ancestors weren't as literal as that. It's only in modern day that people are so literal minded as that. But these stories represent the way in which concepts and ideas and the world, the parts of the world around us work with each other and play together. The way that people are and the way that nature is. If you'd spoken to somebody, say 900 years ago, about a myth, they would never have believed that Thor literally disguised himself as a woman to go and be married to a giant to get his hammer back, which Loki had misappropriated. But the themes of the story would mean something. And there would be a deep belief in the principles behind the story. So let's use that word holistic again. It's a much more holistic way of thinking where stories inform meanings, which informs the relationship you have with the world around you and with your own self. And it's just a fascinating subject. And we have all of these wonderful old poems and stories preserved, of course, in the Eddas and texts such as the Havamal.
The Havamal, indeed.
A collection of wisdom sayings and mythology. So it's
all 164 verses of it. Yeah. And I'm sure, like you, I mean, I've read it in English, obviously. Coming on to that, and because we are primarily concerned with the performance art of magic and all that you've spoken about at the moment, how it transfers, if you like, or blends in. Odin, who is supposed everybody knows Odin, well, he plucked out his eye because this is what Mima, the sorcerer, demanded from him for knowledge. I mean, we're not going to go into the whole story, which you and I and possibly others know, but that was the price.
Mm.
You know, the universal tree, and then you spoke of what was it called? The Tremin tree in the Isle of Man?
Yes, the fairy tree.
Talk to us a little bit about that and the belief in fairies. Now, here we are in 2021. And have we advanced that much? My contention is no, not really. We might have gone a little bit backwards in the world. Technology-wise, yeah, maybe. Humanity-wise, well, that's a whole other different philosophical connection. But how wonderful is it? Now, I bet you every one of the people watching this at the moment, myself included, at one stage of their lives, went to bed in the sincere belief that the tooth fairy would come and take the tooth and leave some money. Now, to me, how is that different to a magician standing up there and telling you something similar? So tell us about your fairies, Michael.
Well, the authentic fairies, of course, were, you find stories of them in all sorts of shapes and sizes and appearances. Sometimes they're startlingly beautiful. Sometimes they're appallingly ugly, subjectively speaking, of course. But the tales of them are, and when you look back at the old tales, they certainly weren't regarded as being in any way twee. They were feared. And there were a lot of associations between the world of the Fae and the world of the dead. The burial mounds, for instance, these were often the entryways into that underworld. And this tied into so many of the beliefs of what became of people when they died, how they would go to the underworld, basically to the world of fairy, and they might be reborn. And possibly even in many ways, the identification between these strange people of the mounds who are under the hill or far away beneath the sea, but at times their world crosses over and intermingles with ours. It was tied into a whole idea of of human life, just as much as it was in otherworldly life. The two were seen to merge and to cross over each other, and it wasn't always a comfortable crossing, because people who would encounter the fairies, they could be led astray, find themselves miles from where they thought they were, disappear for years on end and think they've been gone for a couple of days. So many stories.
These stories are worldwide. I mean, it's not
Oh,
just
yes.
because people talk about this. I mean, we're not going to go into alien abduction and that's a whole different subject. But as you rightly pointed out, there are people who, and I dare say there may be someone sitting here watching who, for whatever reason, says, yeah, that happened to me once or twice or 10 times. You kind of go, what? The last time I looked at my watch, it was 3:30. It's now 10:30 at night. What happened to that time? Nobody really knows, to the best of my knowledge. And it's the same thing with, I mean, I do a whole effect with it using deja vu. I mean, obviously I play it up for a magic effect, but the concept of deja vu is, I would love to know how and why that happens. I've done a ton of research on it, spoken to a ton of people, and I have no clue. I just accept it, that it's there. It's there. It happens. For the two people who go, what are you talking about, Anthony? What the heck is deja vu? Well, it's a French word, which loosely translated means you are reliving a similar moment in time that you had lived before. Everything about it, suddenly it just happens. I've done all this before. I have no explanation for it. I doubt if you do, Michael, but
of course,
these are the things you're talking about with the fae folk, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. And all of these things, of course, all of these stories can be told as performance stories with an effect built into them. And for me, this is important because it tells them often to a new audience, to people who haven't heard that particular story before, or haven't had it brought home to them in that way, where the story's made to match the beats of the effect, so that the story comes to its end and look what's happened. And it's especially powerful. And one thing I'm very keen on doing wherever I can is whatever effects I choose, I like them to be things which are they seem to be either entirely down to the decisions made by an audience member, or it's something that can happen in their hands. So I'm the storyteller. The magic's happening to them. And this is really powerful in getting people to experience it and to experience these stories and possibilities in a new way. And this is obviously, I do it because I'm passionate about these particular themes. It's all part of being a Manxman, I think.
Well, it probably is. And I think at heart, a lot of us are Manx men or women. And, if we sat down with people privately, as I'm sure you have, over a beer or dinner or whatever after a gig, and you start talking to other people, and they're kind of going, yeah, well, I'm kind of like, I don't know, maybe, yeah, there could be something to this, right? And that's where I'm at. I'm kind of like, well, I got a ton of evidence. I've got no proof on certain things, but a ton of evidence. It's a little arrogant for me to just kind of go, oh, no, I'll just dismiss it. You can't do that. There's something there. I have no idea what it is, but it's there. And I've been interested in it for well over 50 years in all its aspects. So we've got runes, we've got all these things that ties between the different legends. And no, it's not just an actor playing Thor in a movie. There's a whole story behind that. And if you forgive me, I actually went with some friends in Denmark where they actually live in this house where Hans Christian Andersen used to live. And there's a lake in front. And I can't remember the name in Danish, but it was something like, Thor's Lake or some such thing. Yes. And every now and again, at certain times, not every day, obviously, lightning would hit the middle of this lake. And they've had all kinds of scientists and all kinds of meteorologists and everybody and the dog over there trying to figure it out. And they can't. Why this happens in front of Hans Christian Andersen's house, nobody knows. So, as you were saying, if we could take that and weave it into a story with, let's just say, a candle that appears and disappears in a flash of fire, those of us who are magicians would understand what I'm saying. Those who are not, don't worry about it. Just enjoy it if you ever watch it. Then, of course, there's the classic, which quite a lot of magicians use. And personally, for me, I think some of them misuse it. And that is, well, I have mine here, which is my very old. Why is it very old, Anthony? Because Anthony is poor and he's got no money to buy a new one. No, it's an old Marseille, well-worn tarot deck. And for me, the props matter to the extent that if I'm going to talk about tarot, I don't want a brand new looking tarot deck. Somehow, there's no magic in it. What do you think, Michael?
I totally agree. This is a fairly recent deck I have here, but my main deck I've been using since I was 18 years old, and that's it's one of the wonderful things, I guess, about bizarre magic is we tend to value old things. It's important because if you're telling a story which has deep roots, it helps if the props you have look as if they've got deep roots as well.
Yes.
It all just adds to the gravitas, which is important.
It is important adding to the gravitas, because I've just realized here one of the things that I do. I mean, there's nothing written in the bottom part is English, but the top part is French. I don't know if people can just see it more or less. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the ancient Marseille deck of tarot. So I'm quite comfortable actually giving this to somebody. Because when people do, or you volunteer, they tend to look at it. And if they don't, I kind of lead them into looking at it, because it says so on the front, the ancient, whatever. So the prop speaks. And as some of you have seen before, it's fallen behind me here, I have the cloak and the hood. Now, if I'm playing that kind of wizard stroke sorcerer, well, the props had better look the part.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't allow people otherwise to suspend that disbelief. Because you and I have spoken and others have spoken, where is magic creating wonder? Yes. Is it making them believe something? No, it's not. Is it fooling them? No, it's not. It's, as you say, bringing them into that. So if you are a sorcerer and fire is appearing from your hand, and then the dagger does something, and then the tarot card or whatever, then it's kind of like, oh my gosh, yeah, they're part of it. And those of us who've studied kinesics, body language, etc., when you're watching an audience, particularly in a parlor show, because on the stage you can't see past the first row, you'll see people leaning forward like this. And you go, great, I've got them. Let's play. Let's play. It's what I like to call a chess game. It's not about winning. It's about checkmating. And it doesn't really matter if the audience checkmate you or you checkmate them, because you've had fun with the board and all the pieces move differently. Does that kind of make any sense in your thinking, in your world?
Yes. It's ultimately it's all about the audience and the experience that they have. And I would prefer that to be as authentic an experience as possible. You're not trying to persuade people of anything, to convince people of anything. You're just trying to show them a bit of wonder and to open their mind to, if they go away thinking, well, maybe the world is a stranger place than I thought it was. That's fantastic. I don't want to tell them in what way it's stranger. I just want them to, I want their imaginations to be stimulated, because the imagination is something that we often hear get put down. People say, oh, it's just your imagination, it's only make believe. imagination created everything we have.
Yes.
Imagination, even such huge tangible things as a bridge across a river, that began in somebody's imagination. They imagined how it would look, how it would be constructed. It's everything we know, but the languages we speak, they came from imagination. The houses we live in, this is where it all begins. And everybody has an imagination. And too often, I think people aren't encouraged to really exercise theirs and to give it free rein. And anything which encourages that, well, I'm going to be right there doing it.
Well, I think this is our task as performers in the performing art, because why else would you do it? I mean, I've quoted him before. Those close to me will know the times I spent with him, and you and I have spoken about this with dear Eugene Berger. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He had a wonderful sense of mischief. But I've mentioned this before, and this is a wonderful example. It's very hard to get hold of, and I think I've got a copy somewhere if anybody wants to see it, where he sat there with just a candle and a piece of string. But the script he used wasn't English from the Bhagavad Gita, ancient Sanskrit from goodness only knows how many thousands of years ago. And of course, with this sonorous voice, he just sat there and he created exactly what you and I have just been talking about. And I see a few people kind of nodding and going, yeah, that's what it's about. And I think that's what we strive for. Let me just kind of come over to you a little bit there and say you have to your right this amazing skeleton. I guess he's one of your props that you use. We saw him in the opening clip where he's coming to peer into the spirit cabinet. What does he do? Does he have a name?
Well, we just call him Skelly usually. He has a role in Zoom shows. I haven't had the right physical space to use him yet because it doesn't show up at the moment, but he's actually coated in glow in the dark paint. All the bones are picked out, and this works well on a Zoom show on a dark night when all the lights are off. So it was just my little sort of fun spook show thing. I don't know if you know, some people will probably know the book. Steve Bryant's Little Egypt Book of Ghosts, which is one I refer to very, very often. It's got a lot of mischievous effects in there, and it's all part of a kind of spirit cabinet routine,
Mm-hmm.
which I do with a vanishing ring, which literally vanishes from my palm in front of the camera.
How wonderful! Now,
So,
you know, I'm not going to use words like ring flight in case we've got lay people here, but even if they've heard it, they don't know what it means. But how wonderful to do that, have the ring vanish and the skeleton just reaching into your back pocket. Now, you know, I'm not knocking anybody who does it. I'm not. I mean, you know, great, to each his own. As dear Eugene used to say, there are magicians and there are tricksters. Guess which one I fall into. So, you know, great. Who am I to argue with him? So that's wonderful. You also have behind you, and I know I spotted him when we were prepping for the show about a week ago. You referred to him as Uncle Nick. He's a puppet, isn't he?
Yes, it actually belongs to my wife, Celeste. But she allows him to hang in the office here.
Yeah.
He's
a splendid looking puppet. Is there any way we can bring him close up to have a look at? There we are. Simple as that. Right. Wonderful. I think his facial expression is absolutely magnificent.
Yes, he has my soul in his hand there. You know, I've told him to keep a tight hold of that.
No, I really, the first time I saw it, I thought, wow, because you know most people kind of look at, well, let's just use the word the devil, whatever, and they go, oh, no, that's spooky. I find this character's face absolutely charming.
Well, of course, I do a devil themed show as well, and one of the one of the things is that the devil of folklore is very, very different from the devil of religion, because these are very often the retelling of very, very old stories, which are always based around usually a kind of contract where one party will be trying to get the better of the other party, and neither of them want to carry out their side of the bargain. And there's an awful lot of comedy involved. So, I do a lot of that as well, the telling of these old stories.
I think, what a lovely prop that, as you say, it's not scary at all. And
No.
You rightly brought about the comparisons between, shall we say, some religions and their interpretations of who the devil is and hell and so on and so forth. Now, to each his own, great respect to anybody who wants to believe whatever they want to believe.
Oh,
But,
yes,
in Native
no
American
offense,
culture,
man.
no offense, man, at all.
But
Native American culture, they have the Wendigo, which is like, and then in the Southwest, you have things like Kachinas or the Guns, which are the evil mountain spirits. So, as you were saying earlier, there's all these stories and legends which have come down literally thousands of years. To my way of thinking, there's got to be something to it. There's got to be something to it. Well, just think about this. Guy wakes up, he trades whatever it is for an old lady, gives him a cow, and she gives him some beans, and he comes home and his mother gets upset and throws it out of the window, and the next thing you know, it's a beanstalk, and he's climbing up it, and he's fighting giants, and he's coming running down with bags of gold. Wow. Patrick? True story? I don't know. I don't know enough to say, hey, it never happened.
There are so many elements in there that you could build effects around.
Yes, indeed.
There really are. You just have to, once you have a story, you just, where am I going with this? Or very often it's the other way around. There'll be an effect, and I'll be scratching my chin, thinking, well, where can I go with this? What does it actually do? What does it remind me of? And when the two come together, there's your magic. Yes.
There's your magic. Well, pretty much like, as we were saying earlier on about Dear Rod's magnificent performance with the planets, etc. You just said it's an astrology effect with planets. It sounds like nothing. It really does, if you say that. But when you watch it, you're riveted, and you go, oh my God, what happened here? And just when you think, where you're going with it, he goes off on a tangent. You got to keep up. So that to me is magic. We must, in fact, talk as we're coming to the end of our hour or thereabouts about a gentleman that's a huge favorite of mine, and I know an even bigger and better favorite of yours. And his painting is hanging behind you, and that is, of course, dear Mr. Edgar Allan Poe. So, Michael Kelly on Edgar Allan Poe, if you please.
I absolutely am a great admirer of Poe. The Poe show that I do is the only one that I've actually performed in America so far. And it's still one of my favorites to perform. It's not the most spectacular, but I love to do it. I love to talk about the man. I love to talk about his stories. I love to talk about his life, because he was such an incredible person, and the themes that run through his stories as well. His use of language. I mean, he was a wonderful poet, but even when he writes prose, the language used it's almost like music, and he has his own little trademark ways of reinforcing things with repeated phrases and words, which are often subtly different each time, but always referring back. It's absolute mastery of storytelling. And of course, his own life was very tragic, and his end was very mysterious. I absolutely reject the notion, which was popular for a long time, that he died of alcohol poisoning. It's now very firmly believed by most people that this was a a lie put about in the first biography, which was written by a man who was not enamored of him at all. But it was then copied. But for me, I love doing the show about Poe, representing several of his stories as magical effects and telling the tale of his life, because it gives me the chance to firstly bring him back to people's attention. And it's a strange thing. He is so pervasive that even people who've never read Poe, when you start naming titles such as The Pit and the Pendulum, The Murders in the Rue Morgue, they've heard of them.
Yes.
They know them, even if they've never read them. And that's wonderful. But also to kind of rehabilitate his memory, that he absolutely was not the drunkard that he's often made out to be in popular thought.
Do we know how he actually died, Michael?
We don't. There are. I have my opinion as to what's most likely, but there are several theories. One, the most likely one seems to be that he was taken by a couping gang who were election riggers back in those times, because he was found in clothes that weren't his own. His luggage was missing, and he was senseless, because they used to ply people with alcohol and beat them to make them vote for the preferred candidate.
Right.
And he was found near the polls. But also the idea is maybe he'd been suffering from tuberculosis for a long time, because he was exposed to it throughout his life. His wife, his mother, his adoptive mother, his brother, they'd all died of the disease. So, and rabies is another popular theory too. But we don't actually know, because unfortunately his death certificate is missing.
Very mysterious.
But
sorry, I was just going to ask you, if you don't mind, in all your research and writings, etc., and I know you've done a lot in particular on Poe, what is your theory as to how he died? Do you have a particular conclusion that you as Michael have come to?
I think the couping, the election rigging theory is the most likely. There's a lot of supporting circumstantial evidence for it, though of course we can't know for sure.
No.
I think he was just beaten and forced to drink so that he would do what they wanted, and then when he was too shambolic to be of any more use to them, they just cast him loose. Because quite a few people lost their lives in this way at that time.
Now, you in fact, when we were doing the prep and so on about a week ago for the show, you came across, you shared with me a phrase of his, because he was not always this sort of dark character who had a raven tapping on the window. There was more aspects to him, which
Absolutely.
we could probably do another time just on Poe. But you shared a phrase with me, which I think encapsulated quite a lot of his, and that was love is.
Well, he's known for many themes in his stories, such as premature burials, burials in walls, animals such as black cats and ravens, all of these macabre themes, which are absolutely there. But there's one recurring theme which is quite obvious to me in so much of his work, his poetry and his prose, which he never seems to get credit for, but it's absolutely there. And it's that love is stronger than death. And his last published work was a poem called Annabel Lee. And it absolutely covers this theme. And as you say, we're about ready to close now. And if I could, I'd like to just close with the last two stanzas of that poem.
Please do, Michael.
But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabel Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And the stars never rise, but I see the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the side of the sea. And
Wow.
that is the Edgar Allan Poe
Oh,
that I liked.
wow. Well, I just had a quick glance at the gallery, and I think quite a lot of people were moved by that, and more particularly the way in which you read it, Michael. So thank you for that. I believe I will acknowledge a lady called Lily, who's part of your club in the
Yes.
Isle of Man, and I've just spotted another gentleman who I've never met called Kendrick Cleveland, who was actually in your video that we played at the beginning.
Yes, Kenrick's a very good friend.
Okay, and I've acknowledged Andrew from our assembly and a few other people that were here, and Jeff McDonald from our paranormal investigation committee is here, and a few other people. Okay, what I'd like to do now is, I think, begin by saying a huge thanks to Peter, who you've not seen behind the scenes, who's been looking after things, and we call him riding shotgun. So he's done a splendid job. So thank you to Peter. Thank you very much, in fact, to Dean of our Assembly, PNP Joel Zawitsky, for organizing the Zoom and everything else. To, of course, President-elect Rod Chow, and indeed our current most illustrious Tom Gentile, and to everybody for being here. In the gallery, I've noticed, in fact, a couple of people. One of them is Brian Rollet, who's from the mystical island of Malta. I mentioned earlier on, we have a show in which he and his lovely partner Lola are going to be paying tribute to the spirits and Houdini. That's happening on the 29th of this month, and you will all receive information about it in the usual places, and it's not to be missed, because we were doing some rehearsals yesterday, and they really rock. They really rock. They're really, really good. So you don't want to miss that. Yeah, yes, there's a spirit cabinet, and yes, there's a metamorphosis amongst other things. So like all these things, it takes time to put it all together and work it. I want to very quickly, before we jump to what we call Las Vegas style meet and greet, and that is where we open up the mics and you can speak and chat, or the microphones directly to my guests, or indeed to Mr. Rod Chow, Mr. Tom Gentile, most illustrious, and ask about the SAM or anything you want to talk about, particularly, I would imagine, with my guest. So I want to say my thank yous to, and Andrew Schwert. I don't know if I mentioned you at all. Great to have you here, Andrew. Great supporter of magic, the Magic Circle, and indeed our assembly. Last but not least, I think I mentioned him before, Mr. Martin Duffy, one of the better known magicians in the UK. Last but not least, I'd like to bring him up on screen and have him tell us what he does. He's a very important gentleman in the Society of American Magicians, and that's Dan Sclair.
I'm the SAM Life Membership Chairperson. If you're interested in becoming a life member, you can go to the SAM website, go under the member section. It's over on the right. There's a drop-down menu, and click on Life Membership, and there's an application, and they'll tell you more about the benefits of being a life member and supporting the SAM.
Yeah, being a life member, I'll jump in there if I may, Dan, just simply means that you pay the one time and that's it. You're a life member, as the title says, rather than
also do it on an installment plan.
Yes.
You do it in 5 installments or 3 installments.
Rather than do it every year, which a lot of people do. I mean, that's fine. And to actually join the Society of American Magicians costs you $55 US, which, as the crow flies, is somewhere in the region of about 40 euros and about 35 pounds sterling. That's it for the whole year, and you get the whole range of benefits. Is this a commercial and a plug? The answer is yes, if you're interested. If you're not interested, no, it isn't. But there are a ton of benefits, all kinds of things that happen. And you get a really lovely certificate and a nice pin that you can wear and use on your website and promote yourself, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, and of course, the shows, and we have the International Assembly. So no matter where you are in the world, whatever nationality you may be, you can join. The title is a little bit of a misnomer, but it doesn't matter. It's there, and it is, for those of you who are interested in these kind of things, the oldest magic organization in the world, founded in 1902 at a place called Matinkas or Makinka. Well, I'll just call it Matinkas. I probably got it wrong. Someone will correct me. And Harry Houdini was the president twice. He still hasn't left us because he figures in all sorts of different things that are happening, including the Paranormal Investigation Committee. So how very apt. So there we are. If you need any information, please get in touch with me. Just send me your email and a message on Facebook, or it's fairly easy to find. So there we are. So thank you to everyone. I hope I haven't left anybody out. If you have any questions, you can now unmute your mics, or I will ask our dean to kindly unmute you, and please speak directly via your microphones or chat to
Give me a couple seconds or two. I have a question, Michael, which, by the way, this was an absolutely wonderful interview today. I love this. But what is your definition of a rune?
A rune? The word means mystery. Technically, these were the angular letters used in Scandinavian and Germanic countries between, about 700 to 1200 years ago. But the word actually means a mystery. And each of the runes is one aspect of the great mystery. They're all windows upon mystery itself, which is, of course, is the whole understanding of life, our place in the world. So that's the definition for me.
Thank you.
If I may just jump in here, listening to you, Michael, just now triggered something for me. And that is, if, like me, if there are people, students of the Kabbalah, I'm not talking about sort of modern thing in typeface string. I'm talking about real stuff. If you're interested, they also have what could be loosely termed as images, diagrams, hieroglyphs, whatever you want, from which, of course, the alphabet comes from. The alphabet, there are different sort of symbols for different sounds within the Kabbalah. So there's a lot of things like this. But I guess the runes are probably much more popular in Western culture.
Absolutely. I mean, every culture had its understanding of these mysteries, and most ancient alphabets had this esoteric aspect to them. The Hebrew alphabet, as you say, with the Kabbalah, the runes, the Irish Ogham, the hieroglyphs, they all had this esoteric aspect to them as well. Because, of course, when you think about it, writing and speaking are magical. We make a lot of fuss about the idea of telepathy, for instance, of reading people's thoughts. But isn't that exactly what we do when we pick up a book? Somebody has used letters, these mysteries, and they've formed them together into words and phrases which have meaning, and they've recorded them on paper. And then in another part of the world, and maybe many years later, I can pick that book up, and their thoughts replay themselves in my mind as I read. That surely that's telepathy. It is magic. And writing and so on, these were always seen as magical things. We see it in the very words we use. We spell words. The grammar we use is the same as the word grimoire, which was a book of spells. So, they're very much, all of these ancient alphabets and concepts, they were all linked to the idea of of mystery and of communication. I mean, the communication itself is a magical thing. It's the linking of two things through a third thing so they can each understand each other.
Well, similes, analogies, if you will. Yes. Sounds. Yeah. Most illustrious, please.
Early on, you mentioned deja vu. I believe from my, at least from my high school teacher, it was something that it meant already seen. You walked into a room and, oh, I got a sense I was already here. You walk into an experience. Well, I think I already did this. So that other aspect of deja vu. Michael, I got to ask you too, your skeleton on your right shoulder there. Years ago, I had a small model of the human body, and you had to put it all together, and it was made out of a material that you could shine a light on it for a few minutes, shut the lights off, and it would still glow. Does yours glow in the dark?
It does, yes. Yes. I've treated it with glow in the dark paint. So it's
okay. Yeah.
got a very ghoulish green glow.
Yeah.
Which is a great idea when you first do it, but not quite so much fun when you're going to the bathroom in the middle of the night in the dark.
And deja vu, you forget.
You remember pretty quickly.
Hey, Joel,
Yes.
your t-shirt, Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut.
No, this actually, because we have people from all over the world and from the Isle of Man, across their pond is someplace called Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So-
the Trinity College in Burlington.
My daughter went there, so of course the only thing I got was a T-shirt. So
There was a Trinity College in Burlington, Vermont, too.
Yeah, well, the Trinity that Joe was talking about is actually quite, it's comparable, I would say, and I would stand corrected, but it's comparable to Harvard or Princeton or anywhere in Oxford or Cambridge. So,
Ron,
yeah.
Ron Chow.
Yes, hi, Dan.
Hi, sorry I missed you in Quebec. I will hopefully see you at SAM convention in January. And I'm also
Absolutely.
registered for FISM, so looking forward to seeing you there also.
Yes, yes, I'll see you at both places. And yeah, to remind everyone about the convention, if you haven't registered yet, it's actually coming up shortly. Actually, January is only a few months away. January 15th to 18th in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's going to be a huge convention in person, and lot of excitement, lots of things planned for that convention. So please go to the SAM website there, and there's a link to the convention website, and check out what's happening. And if you remember, there's actually a lower rate for SAM members to register.
97 days.
Yeah, that's it.
Counting.
That's it.
97.
Yeah. So Anthony, excellent interview. Again, really enjoyable. And Michael, thank you for sharing. Just have a question for Michael. How do you use the tarot in your presentations? Do you do real tarot readings, or do you use it in a magical manner?
Both, to be honest, Rod. There are some really, really good effects out there using the tarot. You can use them, of course. You can use the principles of just about any kind of card magic with them to make an effect happen. And with the images on them, they're a wonderful tool for telling stories. But I do also read tarot. I do think that if you're going to use them, you should understand their authentic meanings. I will also say, though, that when I do tarot readings with shows, I always stress that it's part of the entertainment. Now, personally, I've seen so many astonishing synchronicities that, yeah, I think there's a lot to the tarot. But I don't want anybody to go away from one of my shows thinking, well, I'm not going to apply to that for that job because he said or something. So I will always perform it with the proviso that this is done for entertainment purposes, because I may be confident to make a decision based upon one of my readings, but I don't want somebody that I don't know their situation or what they're going through. I think it's important that I present it as an entertainment for them. I will still read it correctly, but you know, there's a very, I think there's a very important line to draw here. So certainly from my perspective, I can't speak for everybody, but that's the way that I approach it.
So you don't force any cards. So what if the death card does show up? How do you get around that?
If the death card shows up, well, it signifies.
He begins.
It depends what they're asking about.
Okay.
Because it signifies the end of a situation, and of course that can sometimes be a good thing.
Yeah.
It's the end of one cycle and the beginning of another one.
Okay.
It only becomes awkward if, the way I read tarot, you lay out several cards and they all kind of work together. I would only become alarmed if it appeared and there were other alarming cards surrounding it, which would make, you know, this is not meant in a good way. It's never happened like that. But then I encourage people to, certainly at a show, to not ask life-changing questions.
Actually,
for that reason.
Michael, if the death card comes up, and even if the devil card comes up after that, all you do is produce your skeleton and then produce your marionette, and you're clean.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like he actually never got around to it, but we talked about it. He sadly has passed. Blessings for his memory, and that dear Eugene with Chinese coins and I Ching, the I Ching rather. Yes. So it's like all these things. There's a serious side of, in inverted commas, serious side of the I Ching, and as Michael was saying, for me, or I guess other folks, we would not want to put that into a performance piece. Yes, we would as an effect, but if it's just reading with the tarot or the coins or the arrow sticks or whatever, then that's, I mean, would you say that's a private matter, Michael, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, you really need to know the person. You need to know their circumstances. You need to know what they're going through, and you need to be pretty confident in that you're in a position to tell them something that's going to be of use to them. There is definitely an ethical element here. If they're having really severe problems or something and they come to you to ask for help with it, you have to ask, am I qualified to give this person advice? And maybe you are, as long as what you're giving them is good, solid advice and you're making it plain it's advice. But sometimes when they see things like tarot cards or runes laid out, they think this is set in stone. From my point of view, these do not tell the future. We hear it called fortune telling. I don't believe they tell the future. I think what you see, it's tied in with Jung's ideas of synchronicity. They give you a snapshot of the patterns in the present, and then you can maybe see how they've come to be, or you can extrapolate them forwards and think, well, you know, this might happen. Maybe you want to think of approaching something in a slightly different way, but it's very fluid and it's not something that's predestined for them. And yet many people, that we have to be aware, will immediately think that when they see them. So there's in order to give somebody a proper reading, there's an awful lot of trust, soul searching, and clearing of the air that needs to go on first.
Michael, a question: where can we buy your books? Because some of your things that you're talking about, the folklore and that sounds fascinating.
They're nearly, well, they are all self-published these days. Either Lulu or Amazon. They're all on Amazon. Yeah.
Excellent.
Is there one in particular that appealed to you, Joe?
Well, talking about, the folklore, of the Isle of Man. Just you grew up with this history and these tales, and to me, that's fascinating to me. I think that's
Yeah. It's not just the Isle of Man. It's from various of the Celtic countries, but For Fear of Little Men is a collection of stories. They're all stories which have been, gathered from historical sources. They haven't just been made up. There are some in there from the Isle of Man. There's even one about Merlin from Geoffrey of Monmouth, which I've retold in my style. So that's probably the best one for folklore, For Fear of Little Men, which is a line from a wonderful poem called The Fairies by William Allingham. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we dare not go a-hunting for fear of little men, which I love.
Michael, do you have a book on the tarot and magic, how it relates?
The most recent one I've written is about the tarot, but it's not about performance magic. It's more about reading and interpreting rune shifting and tarot transformation, which is about both runes and tarot. For one that relates to tarot and performance magic, there's a nice little book out by Keith Hart in Scotland. He has a website, Blackheart, that's HART.co.uk, and he sells a lot of bizarre effects and books on there. And he has a book, I'm trying to remember its exact title. It's something like its title will be obvious anyway. It's something like tarot for magicians, or something along those lines. And
if you go to his website, I dare say that the title will pop up, won't it, Michael?
I'll have a quick look just now.
Okay. Yeah.
Michael, while you're doing that, I just looked up there. For those who have Kindle and Kindle Unlimited, For Fear of Little Men is part of your subscription. It's free for you. So
oh yes, that's on Unlimited, so you can actually read it for free if you subscribe
read it for
to
free.
Unlimited.
I'll be reading it tonight.
Trickery for tarot readers on Blackheart's website. And that's a really good book which combines reading and effects. He tends to use an effect as a kind of convincer, and there's some really easy stuff to do there.
Great, thanks, Michael.
What we can do, Rod, at some stage is get together and I'll share my
Anthony,
if you want to call it that, I'll share my invention with you. You can use it.
Okay.
Quite happily, yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to say much in case we have some lay people, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, you know how to get hold of me. We're always talking to each other, so give me a heads up and I'll share it with you. I think you'd like it. Anyway, sorry, was that Jeff McDonald wanted to ask a question?
In the movie The Matrix with Keanu Reeves,
Yeah.
they have a concept called a glitch in the Matrix,
Mm-hmm.
which is the same thing as deja vu.
Yes, in some ways. Yes, I recall the scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
As Thomas rightly pointed out, it comes from the French, which is, already seen as such. Yeah. But moves on to say, you are reliving. In fact, I'm using it from my script, when you're reliving a moment in time. And it's part of my script.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really what, and it's a thing that pretty much almost everyone in the audience can identify with, because they've all had that kind of experience.
Yes.
And that's what I do in the script. You are reliving a moment in time, and whatever. When you're performing, and that's really what it is. But you're right about the glitch in the Matrix. Yes, it's sort of going back, but at the present time, which is a kind of time continuum, astrophysical impossibility.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, but it makes for good magic. Okay, well, has anybody got anything else they would like to add, talk about, or address mainly to Michael, really? Yep. Okay, well, I think all that remains then is to say thank you kindly. Keep your eyes open for the next Darkstone Dossiers, which is on the 23rd, and it features a remarkable lady called Dorothy Dietrich, who has been with the SAM for a very long time, the only woman to ever catch bullets in her teeth. No, really, the only woman to hang upside down in a straitjacket while the rope is on fire. She is also part of a committee within the SAM where she is taking care of some of the repair work that needs to be done on Houdini's gravesite, his tomb, really, if you like, in the Malpaca Cemetery, not that far from Joe, in Queens, about 180 miles from you, isn't it, Joe, where you are now? Yeah.
Hour and a half. Yeah.
Hour and a half, yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's an amazing place. It's a wonderful place to visit. I'm very privileged and honored to have been taken there by our current dean. So yes, of course, we'll be talking about that. Well, it's October. It's it's all about this stuff. So yeah, Houdini's going to figure. I told you about the show from that's coming in from later on the 29th. I have for magicians. I have something very special for you on the 27th. And at the moment, only Joel and I know about this, and I ain't telling you till I'm ready. Okay,
And-
Tom, please. Yes,
And
sir.
the cemetery is one of the other items, like the Great Wall of China, can be seen from space.
Oh, that I did not know. Oh,
Cemetery is so large, it can be seen from space.
yeah. Well, I didn't go to all of it, Tom, when George took me there.
It's
But
very
George pointed out,
expansive.
yeah, there's somebody behind Houdini's.
Well, you
I
got,
call it a
you
tomb.
got
It's
Larry Weeks. Larry Weeks is down the road a little bit over the hill.
Was
and
it
then you
Thurston or somebody quite famous
I think
behind him?
Thurston's up on top of it.
Yeah, right. And Bobby Tokova is a good friend of mine from New York, a wonderful, wonderful international magician. He's also a great historian. I don't know if this is of interest to anybody, but it is to me. I love all this stuff. He told me that when you walk in on the ground, there's a, for want of a better word, a block of slab, whatever, with Bess Houdini written on it. And he told me she's not actually buried there. The SAM does go to a lot of trouble to preserve and look after that site, and the bust is taken off from time to time because it's been vandalized by people.
And the bust is Harry's the only one that is able to have a likeness on his monument. There are
Yes.
no likenesses allowed in the cemetery.
And that's one of the things that Dorothy and her partner Dick Brooks look after, along with, help me out here, guys, Richard Bowers. Is it Richard Bowers who does that?
Steve Bowers, who has he
Yeah.
is no longer involved with it. Joe.
Oh, okay. So who's involved now, Tom?
Joe Devlin is our man on
Oh.
the site.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did not know that. Yeah, okay. Now I have to ask a question. At odd times, I've been watching a gentleman called Matthew Collins, who has sat there absolutely riveted and nodding in agreement. I love people who agree with Michael and me. I really do. Who are you, sir? May I ask? Are you part of the Isle of Man? If you want to take your mic off briefly. So, where are you from, and how did you find your way to us?
I attend Michael's magic shows on Zoom.
Ah, okay.
He's one of mine.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay,
I know
wonderful.
Matthew quite
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Another splendid-looking gentleman, just like Peter, a lovely beard, and you were nodding away as I was watching at odd times. And I thought, oh wow, great, yeah. And of course we've got, as I acknowledged her, I don't know your full name, so I'll just call you Lily, if I may, who Michael says is you're part of his club, the Magic Club. Yes. Yeah, we should all get together. And Brian, of course, everybody knows. Well, not everybody, most people know. And Brian and his lovely partner, Lola, are going to be on the 29th in the Chamber of Mystery. Yes. All going to be good fun. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you to everybody. I think, if I don't know, Martin is moving. Martin, did you want to join in and say something? Martin Duffy?
No, I was looking closely at your camera, Anthony, at the thing behind you. Right, okay, I'll speak to you tomorrow.
The thing behind me?
Yeah, on the wall behind you, is it a backdrop? Is it a physical object?
Oh no, this is a backdrop that's built. I mean,
Right.
I'm happy to show. I'll tell you what it is. I mean, a lot of them seen it before. I mean, I've got
That's
this huge
interesting.
desk with a big screen and whatever. Just any way I can see and do stuff. This is a backdrop, and that is, as you probably know, it's my symbol. Yeah, that's a long esoteric story behind
Right.
that, which I won't bore you with now, but I'm very happy to share it with you, Martin. Very happy. Provided you bring decent
It's
scotch.
interesting. That's what I was just leaning forward, just to have a look at it,
Yeah.
closer look at
Yeah.
it.
No, it's there. I tried all kinds of backdrops. In the end, I settled for that. Yeah, I've got it on my ring, and the long story. Actually, it's very esoteric. It's a long story. I won't go into it now, but it's all made up of triangles, and it's a Native American thunderbird. But in Hebrew teachings, it's the ruach, which translated again, it's one of those words you can't translate. So in English, it's just called the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit. But ruach in Hebrew means something much more. And this is a Danish longship. Most people call it a Viking ship. No such thing as a Viking ship. Viking was a verb. It was something you did. It's not something you wear. Which people, God, I'm so arrogant, Anthony, telling everybody what you know. No, seriously, I'm just sharing it. Yeah, it's just fallen into misuse, really. People say Vikings. Yeah, okay, that's fine.
What's the verb? V-I-K-E?
No, V-I-K. No, that is the verb, Tom. V-I-K-I-N-G.
Yeah,
Kind of like, hey, Tom, you doing anything tomorrow morning? Not really. Okay, well, let's get the ship and go Viking.
I'm Viking tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm Viking tomorrow. What are you doing? Yeah, I'm Viking. Yeah. Yeah, which
And now it's Vicodin.
which beats Batman peddling all over the state in New York and then stopping for ice cream. No, sorry, that's an in joke. That's an in joke. Sorry. Well, I got to do it. Well, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Thank you all so much. If nobody's got nothing to add, yeah, Martin, please get in touch with me. I'm happy to share the big full story about how that all came about. It is actually very hysteric, seriously. Yeah, so thank you, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. And
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.
I'll leave the last
Bye-bye.
word. I'll leave the end words to Michael.
Thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure. It's been a lovely chat, as I knew it would be. I thoroughly enjoyed our pre-talk, and I knew this one would be good too. And I hope you've all enjoyed it as well.
Thank you.
See you in Derby next year, Michael.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you very much, Michael.